Hello, everybody. Welcome to 6 Minutes a Day, a journey into your higher self. My name is Justin, the creator of Strength, Yoga, and Freedom, either the podcast which you're listening to or the YouTube channel which you're watching. Welcome. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And whether this is the first time you're finding me or you have been here for all 14 days and now you're on the 15th one, which is our halfway point, welcome. And review any material that you need to from the previous 14 or 15 days. It's all there for you. You can review it at your own pace. You can go back and do any exercises or feel like if you need a refresher, you've got it there for you. The first half of this program has been all about physical changes and physical routines and habits and all of that we could add into our life to battle through some of the maybe old and dying habits that we have, maybe those old stagnant thoughts, the junk, the clutter in our minds that cause us to have anxiety, the triggers that are in our minds. That's what we've been talking about all through these first 3 weeks of training, the first 15 days. And we're gonna wrap this up today with talking about really the segue on how to take those emotions and take all of the things that we've been feeling and how we manage it as we start to move into dealing with other people, which is the whole second half of this training, which will start next week. But we're gonna have a small segue into that as we make that connection today between the physical and mental parts of ourselves and how we start to interact with the world. So that's today's training. I have a special announcement at the end of this training you're not gonna wanna miss, so please stay tuned to the end. So because we wanna get to that announcement also, let's get started. As I mentioned, the connection between how you're working on yourself right now and how you're going to interact with the world and with other people is making a connection today. And that is how we manage our emotions with other people. So we have two sides to our brain. We have the logic side and we have the emotional side. So the logic side is where you formulate all of your strategic thinking and where you're able to make plans. You make decisions from your logic side of your brain without emotion. You make decisions in emotion in your emotional side of your brain, which most of the time can come from the subconscious. It can come from all of those old patterns and they push you to make some kind of decision. And so while you're in emotion, and so what's important to do is to remember everything that we have talked about in these past 14 days has been identifying how we are moving through physical or emotional habit loops and making decisions based off of them. An example is if you are afraid of something, you make a decision not to do that particular thing because you're afraid of the outcome. That's operating from your emotions. It is important to pause and allow yourself the time to process your emotions before dealing with any situation that feels super emotionally overwhelming, which is a lot of situations, right? A lot of situations in life, our emotions are never gonna go away. They're always gonna be there. You are always gonna have nervousness in your mind and in your body. You're always gonna have some kind of anxiety. We talked about this. You may feel afraid. You may feel dread. The key is working through those before dealing with other people. And so I have some ways to manage emotions that you've been dealing with as you've been working through this program. I have some ways to deal with that and to manage that so that your relationships stay in that loving state, as loving as you can have for yourself and for the other people in the world that are around you. First, though, remember that you're in a relationship with yourself first, above anything else. So when you hear anybody say that another person completes them or that they complete me, you're basically thinking of yourself when you say that as not a whole person because you need somebody else to complete you. And that's just not true. You are everything that you need right here in front of you. So honoring the processing of your emotions and who you are before starting to engage with someone else in an emotional or a heated exchange is very important. And I've talked about this in other videos on this channel before, so you can always back up and watch those, listen to them as well. So, how can you manage emotions with others? We are going to talk way more in depth about this starting in day 16 next week, but let me give you some tools that we can think about as we're off for the next 2 days. We talked about this already. Insert a mindful routine when you feel yourself getting emotional. So if you wake up in the morning and you're angry or you're upset or you're anxious or you're fearful, it's probably not the best idea to yell at your partner about it because they have no idea what's going on yet. Figure your shit out first, right? So you need to feel and recognize that you are emotional first before you do anything else. Second of all, pay attention to how others are behaving. Watch for their signs and their signals and how that triggers you. Is it triggering your fear? Is it triggering your dread? Is it triggering your possessiveness or maybe your control that we talked about yesterday in yesterday's training, where we talked all about connecting yoga with your physical body and how you operate? Nonviolence, ahimsa, is very important to focus on. And so pay attention to how others are behaving and how that triggers you. This next one, not everybody may like, but I really believe that this is very, very, very important. Work is not the place for emotions. It's not the place for having in-depth emotional conversations. Work is work. So there is no place, in my opinion, for getting emotional at work. Work is about work. So work is not supposed to be personal. You're achieving, at the end of the day, when you work, you're doing so to achieve a desired outcome. You're not working so that you can hash through all your emotional concerns with your coworkers. And we're going to talk more about work. So watch out for that as well, because that could lead to trouble. Do not react, but respond. And if you cannot respond in the moment, because a lot of times something happens and it triggers you and you're in the moment and you want to react right away. It could be a text message, it could be an email, it could be you could be on the phone and you want to react, or in person and you want to react right away. You have the right, when you feel your emotions bubbling up, to say, I don't want to continue this right now. I want to pick this up later. You have the right to do that as a communicator. And as a human being, that is your right not to engage in communication that you feel is making your anxiety worse. So if you have someone in your life who is triggering you like that and you tell them, I'm not going to continue this, and they keep going, well, they're crossing a boundary. And we'll talk more about boundaries. So it's okay to say, I'm not going to talk about this right now. I'll come back to you later, or we'll revisit this later when I've had a chance to work through this. And as I just mentioned, you want to set clear boundaries for the future and you want to uphold them, because setting boundaries sometimes is easy. I am not going to do that anymore. And then you do it, right? We do it. So that's important as well. All of these ways to manage your emotions when you're dealing with other people can help you to not engage in those hurtful, sometimes aggressive, sometimes controlling, manipulative, and quite frankly, degrading conversations that we sometimes engage in when our emotions run high. So as we wrap up this week, as we wrap up the first half of this training program, can you just allow yourself the ability to pause and take time when you start to feel like your emotions are running high? If someone else does not respect the fact that you need time to process your emotion, then that person may not belong in your life. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because sometimes not only do we have to clean up our own house and our own insides, and then we have to start cleaning up who's around us and what's around us and where we go, which can be hard. Well, it is hard. It's very overwhelming. I hope today that you find that peace and that happiness. You will. So when you do, pause and recognize it because you deserve it. Okay, so here's our special announcement. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because come the end of this month, end of July of 2022, I am going to be starting to put out some yoga classes on the YouTube channel. So if you want to take some physical yoga with me, I'm going to have all kinds of yoga classes coming out. Please be sure you're subscribed. Those of you that are listening to this on the podcast, you can be the first to know when the YouTube channel starts putting out some classes by just joining the email list. Of course, you can also connect with me on Instagram. The links are all in the podcast description, and then you can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well through all of those links so that you also can join me physically on your mat. So after we've worked through a lot of the mental stuff here, we can get on that mat and start to practice physical yoga as well. So I'm so excited to bring all that to you coming up at the end of this month. But in the meantime, we have another 15 days of strength and of freedom through the 6 minutes a day podcast or the training that you're watching on YouTube. And I can't wait to share everything about dealing with other people with you as we get into that. So thank you all for being here and have a fantastic few days off. And I will see you in day 16.